Jainism. The last and 24th Tirthankar of the Jains, Vardhaman Mahavir, also spread his message around this time, that is, 2500 years ago. He was a Kshatriya prince of the Lichavis, a group that was part of the Vajji Sangh. About which you read in chapter 5. At the age of 30, he left home and went to live in a forest. For 12 years, he led a hard and lonely life, at the end of which he attained enlightenment. He taught a simple doctrine. Men and women who wished to know the truth must leave their homes. They must follow very strictly the rules of ahimsa, which means not hurting or killing living beings. All beings, said Mahavir, long to live. To all things, life is dear. Ordinary people could understand the teachings of Mahavir. And his followers, because they used Prakrit. There were several forms of Prakrit used in different parts of the country and named after the regions in which they were used. For example, the Prakrit spoken in Magadh was known as Magadhi. Followers of Mahavir, who were known as Jains, had to lead very simple lives, begging for food. They had to be absolutely honest and were especially asked not to steal. Also, they had to observe celibacy. And men had to give up everything, including their clothes. It was very difficult for most men and women to follow these strict rules. Nevertheless, thousands left their homes to learn and teach this new way of life. Many more remained behind and supported those who became monks and nuns, providing them with food. Jainism was supported mainly by traders. Farmers who had to kill insects to protect their crops found it more difficult to follow the rules. Over hundreds of years, Jainism spread to different parts of North India and to Gujarat, Tamil Nadu, and Karnataka. The teachings of Mahavir and his followers were transmitted orally for several centuries. They were written down in the form in which they are presently available at a place called Vallabhi in Gujarat. About 1,500 years ago. See map 7 at page number 105. Jain. The word Jain comes from the term jinn, meaning conqueror. Why do you think the term jinn was used for Mahavir? The Sangh. Both the Mahavir and the Buddha felt that only those who left their homes could gain true knowledge. They arranged for them to stay together in the Sangh, an association of those who left their homes. The rules made for the Buddhist Sangh were written down in a book called Vinay Pitak. From this, we know that there were separate branches for men and women. All men could join the Sangh. However, children had to take the permission of their parents and slaves that of their masters. Those who worked for the king had to take his permission. And debtors that of creditors. Women had to take their husband's permission. Men and women who joined the Sangh led simple lives. They meditated for most of the time and went to cities and villages to beg for food during fixed hours. That is why they were known as bhikkhus and bhikkhunis. The Prakrit word for renouncer is beggar. They taught others and helped one another. They also held meetings to settle any quarrels that took place within the Sangha. Those who joined the Sangha included Brahmins, Kshatriyas, merchants, laborers, barbers, courtesans, and slaves. Many of them wrote down the teachings of the Buddha. Some of them also composed beautiful poems describing their life in the Sangha. List at least 2 ways in which the Sangha described in this lesson was different from the one mentioned in chapter 5. Were there any similarities? On this page, a picture is shown. It's a cave hollowed out in the hills. This is a cave in Karle, present-day Maharashtra. Monks and nuns lived and meditated in these shelters. Monasteries. To begin with, both Jain and Buddhist monks went from place to place throughout the year. Teaching people. The only time they stayed in one place was during the rainy season, when it was very difficult to travel. Then their supporters built temporary shelters for them in gardens, or they lived in natural caves in hilly areas. As time went on, many supporters of the monks and nuns, and they themselves, felt the need for more permanent shelters, and so monasteries were built. These were known as vihar. The earliest vihar were made of wood and then of brick. Some were even in caves that were dug out in hills, especially in western India. Page number 64. A Buddhist text tells us, just as the waters of rivers lose their names and separateness when they flow into the mighty ocean, so are varna and ranks and family forgotten when the followers of the Buddha join the order of monks. Very often, the land on which the vihar was built was donated by a rich merchant or a landowner or the king. The local people came with gifts of food, clothing, and medicines for the monks and nuns. In return, they taught the people. Over the centuries, Buddhism spread to many parts of the subcontinent and beyond. You will learn more about this in Chapter 9. The system of ashrams. Around the time when Jainism and Buddhism were becoming popular, Brahmins developed the system of ashrams. Here, the word ashram does not mean a place where people live and meditate. It is used instead for a stage of life. 4 ashrams were recognized. Brahmacharya, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, and Sannyas. Brahmin, Kshatriya, and Vaishya men were expected to lead simple lives and study the Vedas during the early years of their life. Brahmacharya. Then they had to marry and live as householders. Grihastha. Then they had to live in the forest and meditate. Vanaprastha. Finally, they had to give up everything and become sannyasis. The system of ashrams allowed men to spend some part of their lives in meditation. Generally, women were not allowed to study the Vedas and they had to follow the ashrams chosen by their husbands. In what way was the system of ashrams different from life in the Sangha? What are the varnas mentioned here? Were all 4 varnas allowed to participate in the system of ashrams? Page number 65. Elsewhere. Find Iran in your atlas. Zoroaster was an Iranian prophet. His teachings are contained in a book called Avesta. The language of the Avesta and the practices described in it are very similar to those of the Vedas. The basic teachings of Zoroaster are contained in the maxim, good thoughts, good words, and good deeds. Here is a verse from the Zend Avesta. Lord, grant strength and the rule of truth and good thinking, by means of which one shall create peace and tranquility. For more than 1,000 years, Zoroastrianism was a major religion in Iran. Later, some Zoroastrians migrated from Iran and settled down in the coastal towns of Gujarat and Maharashtra. They were the ancestors of today's Parsis. Imagine, you want to go to listen to one of the preachers who lived about 2,500 years ago. Describe your conversation with your parents as you try to persuade them to let you go. Keywords: Tanha, Prakrit, Upanishad, Atma, Brahma, Ahimsa, Jain, Sangh, Bhikkhu, Vihar, Monastery, Ashram. Let's recall. 1. Describe the ways in which the Buddha tried to spread his message to the people. 2. Write whether true or false. A. The Buddha encouraged animal sacrifices. B. Sarnath is important because it was the place where the Buddha taught for the first time. C. The Buddha taught that karma has no effect on our lives. D. The Buddha attained enlightenment at Bodh Gaya. E. Upanishadic thinkers believed that the Atma and Brahma were ultimately one. Page number 66. 3. What were the questions that Upanishadic thinkers wanted to answer? 4. What were the main teachings of the Mahavira? Let's discuss. 5. Why do you think Anagha's mother wanted her to know the story of the Buddha? 6. Do you think it would have been easy for slaves to join the Sangh? Give reasons for your answer. Let's do. 7. Make a list of at least 5 ideas and questions mentioned in this lesson. Choose 3 from the list and discuss why you think they are important even today. 8. Find out more about men and women who renounce the world today. Where do they live? What kinds of clothes do they wear? What do they eat? Why do they renounce the world? Some important dates. Upanishadic thinkers, the Jain teacher Mahavir, and the Buddha, about 2,500 years ago. Writing down of the Jain text about 1,500 years ago.